Mr. Speaker. He said he had a bill that he thought and hoped maybe the Republicans could support. Then he used the word united. You know the easiest way to know if Republicans support it? Ask them. Let them in the room. Actually work with them. That's probably a quicker way. The united part's a little difficult if you want to unite people and you leave them out. So let me recap, having been the leader on this side of the aisle, having worked on numerous COVID relief bills, let's recap what we have gone through each and every time we tried to bring America relief. And you know what? Let's not take my word for it. Let's just read headlines. I think that'll work best. March 22nd, the New York Times. Emergency Economic Rescue Plan in limbo as Democrats block action. Yes, that was the New York Times. That was March 22nd. So let's go to April 9th. Let's go to the NPR. Senate Democrats block GOP effort to boost small business aid. A week later, we watched the Speaker of this House appear on Late Show bragging about blocking the relief while eating high-end ice cream. For reference, there were 22 million unemployed Americans at that time. August 3rd, CBS News says Democrats reject White House offer for short-term extension of unemployment benefits. Let's go to September 10th. Politico. Senate Democrats block Republican COVID relief bill. That's weird. All those headlines, I never heard united. I did hear blocking. I did see the Speaker. Now let me tell you a little bit of my personal experience. When we wanted to do the CARES Act, the Senate worked with Republicans and Democrats by committee. They put the bill together. You listened to Leader Schumer that night said, yes, we're ready to go. The bill is prepared. I took the red eye and flew back. The Speaker did too. We went into the meeting together. And you know what? Just read one of these headlines. The Speaker was able to stop it for a whole nother week. How many people were laid off that week? But you know what? There was change in the bill. The arts and the Kennedy Center got a little more. But that was the only thing. And then we were able to pass it. And in there we were able to produce the PPP for small businesses. Allowed you to pay your rent, your utilities. But you took that money and you paid your employees. Why were you paying your employees? Because government shut down your business. Was it successful? Whoa, was it successful. Did it go to the owner? No, it went to the people. It went to the workers. 50 million workers were saved. It was so powerful, so successful that the money was running out. So you know what? The Treasury Secretary sent a letter to us and said, you don't need to change anything. Just add a little more money because it's so successful and saving so many jobs. Well, we got our answer. One person stopped it all. And she did it on the Late Show for all of America to see. You remember her smiling as she opened that refrigerator and denied those 22 million people that they were going to join those unemployment lines, and she was going to smile about it because she had her ice cream. And you know what happened? I listened to the Speaker's words. She said, you know what? We're going to get this done. We're not going to leave because she has all the power of whether we stay in here and do our job or not. So it doesn't matter if 1/3 on the other side stays home and votes by proxy and still gets their paycheck. She had everybody leave. But then I had hope. I had hope those who were unemployed. I had hope for those who wanted to go back to school and needed the money. Because the Speaker called an emergency meeting, forced us to come back here. So I thought maybe she changed. Maybe actually what she said she meant this time. So she was going to force Congress back, and she did. And you know what? 1/3 on the other side didn't show because they didn't think it was an emergency. Was it about COVID relief? Was it about the American people who were hurting? No. It was about the post office. It was political. So we should have everybody come back. And you know, When you're in the minority, there's only certain rules you have and certain options to put something on the floor. So you know what the Republicans chose to do that day when the Democrats chose to talk about the post office? We put COVID relief on the floor. So there was an option. There was an opportunity. The power of the Speaker rose again. She put her thumb down and everybody else on the other side followed. So you know what? The American public lost that day too. They lost one more time. The facts speak for themselves. The common denominator in holding up relief for the American people is very simple. Speaker Pelosi. She spent the last several months stonewalling negotiations instead of working to solve problems. You know why we're here today? Because the Republicans put a discharge petition on the floor. I wonder why we got outlet early last Friday. The discharge petition must have become ripe where people could sign it. When her members revolted and she responded by recycling an old, unrelated liberal wish list from her first bill. Now at a time when 837 more Americans are filing for unemployment and small businesses are closing permanently, she's wasting Americans' time on yet another multi-trillion-dollar special interest bailout that rewards K Street, not Main Street. Today's so-called compromise isn't realistic or responsible. It's the Pelosi pipe dream 2.0, and it's filled with the same radical, reckless, and ridiculous ideas as the first bill. Instead of prioritizing new money for small businesses through the Paycheck Protection Program, it provides a massive tax break to the millionaires and billionaires that are totally unrelated to the coronavirus. Now let me give you an example. Let's take one person in America that's going to benefit this. You actually ought to rename this bill the Mike Bloomberg bill. Mike Bloomberg is reported to have made $3.5 billion last year. He lives in New York, so if you take the state and local taxes, you combine it, it's 12.5%. So that would mean, if this bill passes, you just gave him $160 million in his pocket. That's an interesting number, $160 million. I wonder how $160 million, if that's how much he would save, how would that affect him? Well, I just read a couple reports, Mr. Speaker. Do you know Michael Bloomberg just put $100 million in to Florida to win it for Joe Biden? And another interesting report, he has given the Democrats $60 million to help them try to keep the majority this year, Mr. Speaker. And what's even more interesting, Michael Bloomberg ran for president. And when he was on stage, you know what he said? He said he bought the Democrats a majority. He said he spent $100 million. He bragged about the individuals that he was able to spend that money on. Some people would wonder, is that money well spent? Some people might wonder if they read that bill, $160 million. What does that mean to the person who's unemployed? I don't think Mike Bloomberg needs that. I know a lot of small businesses. I know a lot of unemployed workers that need the money. But you chose somebody else to respond to. You chose somebody else to reward. Shame on you. Instead of guaranteeing common sense protections against frivolous lawsuits for schools, for small business, for child care, for churches, it gives amnesty, work visas, and taxpayer-funded stimulus checks to illegal immigrants. Lots of times when you read a bill, you see what you prioritize. Instead of boosting jobs, it bails out the cannabis industry. Have you read your own bill? In fact, it mentions cannabis more than it mentions jobs. Did you read the bill? It mentions cannabis more than it mentions jobs. I would challenge anybody in this body to name me one time in their district, in one meeting, that it got mentioned cannabis more than it mentioned jobs and what you're going through right now. Our districts may be different, but I don't believe anybody has that. Instead of reopening the economy, It releases criminals to our communities. Democrats think the economy should be locked down, but they don't think serial killers should be locked up. But the Speaker's latest bill does have a noteworthy difference from the original. At a time when the left-wing mobs are creating chaos in our cities, the bill unequivocally embraces the left defund the police agenda. In fact, it removes $600 million of the emergency funding for state and local enforcement and community-oriented policing that was in the first bill. That's where you cut. Democrats actually believe the top priority of Congress is fewer cops and more criminals. Again, sometimes when you read the bills, it lets people to know their priorities. I listened to the Speaker before. She always told me, bills show your values. I heard the Speaker recently said, the Democrats' values are different than Republicans. If these are your values, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Another striking difference is the tens of billions of dollars for public education to combat misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine. Mr. Speaker, I was happy to hear my colleague on the other side speak a little earlier about the vaccine. I was excited because the Democrat nominee for president, the person he chose to be his running mate, doesn't think people should take the vaccine, even though it's going to be safe and effective and save people's lives. It's interesting. The individual who's running for president on the Democrat side said he is the Democratic Party. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Speaker Pelosi actively spread in public over the last few weeks misinformation about an ability to save lives. American families, workers, and small businesses will continue to pay the price for Democrats' refusal to take this crisis seriously. It doesn't have to be this way. That's the worst part of all this. It doesn't have to be this way. As the past several months have proven, targeted and timely relief related to COVID hardship actually works. 50 million people got a paycheck because of PPP. I can't tell you how many people got laid off for every time Speaker Pelosi has delayed our bills. I can't tell you how many households and how many businesses have gone bankrupt because she didn't keep her word and say we would stay here and do it. I can't tell you how many more people wonder if their kids can go to college because Nancy Pelosi, our Speaker, called us back for an emergency, but it wasn't about COVID. Instead of using America's suffering as leverage to pass a socialist agenda, Congress should be working on getting the American people back to work safely and back to school safely. Republicans have spent months using every tool available to minority to build on the CARES Act and get support to Main Street. You know, the American public actually ought to see how people vote here. Because just yesterday, we put on the floor a vote for PPP. Every single Democrat voted no. Every single one. It's something they've already supported before. Money is already sitting there, more than $130 billion. This month, our efforts culminated in a discharge petition to reopen the Paycheck Protection Program, which I've said have already saved 51 million jobs. Mr. Speaker, to the American public, what does a discharge petition mean? You see, the Speaker, whoever he or she is, has all the power. They can determine what comes to the floor. But a discharge petition gives the power to the members. All it takes is 218 members to sign it. The public knows what it is. All it would do is take the money that is there for the Paycheck Protection Program and make sure the bill comes to the floor and can be voted on. It'll be really telling to know how many people back home say they support it and how many times they come here and are fearful. Fearful of if there are threats if they sign the discharge petition. The petition is being led by Ranking Member Steve Chabot and Jamie Herrera Butler. I want to thank both of them. Because you know what they have done? They put the American people first. Steve Chabot, Ranking Member of Small Business. When we were crafting the CARES bill, where the PPP was created, yes, it was him who worked so hard to make sure the small business, those who are employed by him, got resources. He did an amazing job. Jamie Herrera Butler, probably one of the most bipartisan members in this body. They didn't do it for political gain. They did it because they listened to their district. As of Friday, this common sense solution officially became open for signatures. Just 218 to earn a vote on the floor. I think it deserves a vote. I think if you took it to the public, they'd pick that a lot sooner than they'd pick what this bill is doing. Mr. Speaker, every member of this body must make a choice tonight. Members who endorse the Speaker's reckless actions can vote yes on this recycled liberal wish list. Then they can go home and explain to small businesses in their district why they prioritized politics over people. They could stand up and say, no, we worked hard for cannabis, a lot harder than we worked for jobs. We made sure the police got cut, and we made sure Mike Bloomberg got paid back. That the $160 million that he's spending in the campaign today, he'll get it all back because the taxpayers will pay him for it. That's exactly what this bill does. It could be the Michael Bloomberg cannabis cut the cops bill. That's power. That's real power. You can make sure Michael Bloomberg does not lose $1 with the $160 million he's invested to make sure Joe Biden and the Democrats stay in power. I mean, if you're that proud of this bill, why don't you name what it does? It makes sure all of America knows cannabis is your number one priority, not jobs. It makes sure that you take care of those who take care of you in a campaign, Michael Bloomberg. And it makes sure everybody knows you do not care about the safety of our streets, that you're going to cut the police by $600 million. That's one heck of a campaign. That's an amazing. You know what's interesting? So many times the leader, as people have said here, the Speaker of the House, she's the Speaker for all of America. And she always tells us, this will tell you what your values are. And I remember what she recently said, that our values are different. I want to agree with the Speaker. Our values are different. On this side of the aisle, we believe in a commitment to America. We believe that we will defeat this virus because we will create a safe and secure vaccine. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
That's correct.
The gentleman is correct. The House is not in order.
You know the other difference in our values? In our commitment to America? You can read it. You can go to commitmenttoamerica.com. That we actually reject defunding the police. We say we'll spend $1.75 billion more on the police, not cut them $600 million. You know what we'll do with the money? Community policing, more training, and 500,000 body cameras. We also have a plan. We can tell you how many jobs we are going to create. We're going to create 10 million new jobs. I don't know how bad or how big you'll expand the marijuana business, but in here it mentions that more than jobs. We're going to end the dependency on China. We just don't say it, we actually do it. We just came out with a task force that only shows you the problem, shows you the solution. You know what we did different, Mr. Speaker, than what you did with this bill? We didn't produce something and say, well, we think the Democrats might like some of this. We actually invited you to join us. Mr. Speaker, the House is still not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House is not in order.
A year ago, I went to the Speaker, and I asked her that we could create a bipartisan committee dealing with China. China is representing its 71st anniversary. There's no more freedom in China today than there was 31 years ago in Tiananmen Square. It took me 8 months of negotiation with the Democrat leadership till they finally said yes. We actually picked the people who were going to be on it. And right before we went to name it, they decided no, they didn't want to be a part of it. This was before COVID. I just don't understand it. I just don't understand that our values are that different. Members who want to bring an end to the Speaker's excuses, who believe this is a moment to work for Main Street, not K Street, should vote no and sign the Herrera-Butler-Shabbat discharge petition. By adding your name, you will be advancing a fair process towards making bipartisan law for American families. That's what our neighborhoods need. They need us to legislate for them, not posture for November. I urge all my Democrat colleagues to join us. Make a commitment to America, not to Michael Bloomberg, not to cannabis. Focus on actually who voted you to get here. Do not be so intimidated because somebody supplies so many millions of dollars to try to persuade people to vote a certain way. Listen to those who've been laid off. I know what it's like to have a dream, to open a small business. I know what the hardships are like. But I have not witnessed personally the hardship of what the virus has done when they've been shut down. The least I would expect is this body that would act, would put people before politics. But unfortunately, yes, the values of one side are different than ours. Every chance we have put forth relief for the American public. And the only opportunity we have now is a discharge petition. Because no one definitely can vote for this. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.